Hey, hello everyone. I hope everyone's doing good. Well, today is my first stream, and before starting, I'm a bit nervous, as you can see right there. But let me just try and be a bit more comfortable and get started. So yes, let me start by telling a bit about myself. So my name is Rahul, and some of you might know me because I've been active in this Alexa community for quite a time now. I've been building skills for the past 3 years, and recently I've joined Dabble Labs as a developer advocate. My role here is to build Alexa skills in Python and build a community around the same. So yeah, you know going forward with that, this is what's my first stream is going to be all about. So uh, first of all, welcome everyone, and just give me a minute. Let me just check if everything is fine, if you can hear me. If you can hear me, it would be great that if you just drop in a comment in the chat. That way I'll know that my sound and video is good enough, and we can get started. Yeah, just let me know. I guess there'll be a bit of a delay, so I'll wait for a few seconds till I just get your approval. If things are fine, just yeah, hey Divyansh, hey. So yeah, just type all good in chat if my voice is clear, and I'll just start off. Okay, Divyansh says there's an issue in my audio all this time. Hello, hello, hello. Is the issue still there, Divyansh? Hello. The cracky noise. Okay. Well, I don't know. It must be a bit of a background noise. Uh, Probably my PC because I have an open PC. It's not in a cabinet actually. Okay, okay, Divyansh. Just give me a minute. Let me just change my mic in that case. Well, just forgive me for all of these mistakes. I'm just streaming in for the first time, and I expect a bit issues. Hmm. Well, I've changed the source of the microphone. Just let me know it's any better now. Is that any better? Oh, great, great, great. Thank you, Sohini. So now that everything is fine, uh, let's get started. So here for today, since this is my first stream and I haven't seen many Python tutorials out there, I thought let's start from the very beginning, from the scratch. Um, so by scratch, I mean that the hello world skill. But there's a small catch here. Like we won't be diving straight into the coding part and going straight by building functions or classes. Ecosystem works. Then we'll get into the development part. So the first thing that question that comes to everyone's mind is how does Alexa actually work? So I know the next slide that I'm going to show you must have seen it, a billion times by now. Uh, Let me just show that to you again. Here's the reason that I'm doing this. The thing is, see here, uh, let me just give you an overview of how a basic Alexa system works. We as a user, when we send uh, a request to Alexa, it's not actually Alexa. The device is an echo device which can be any speaker, and it's a request to the Alexa cloud, which is where actually all the processing happens. So when our request reaches the cloud, it forwards the request to endpoint, and our endpoint gives a response, which is then sent back to the device, and we get a response from Alexa in our works. And this part is the major part that you see, the request and response part. So all Alexa does is just it sends a request and it responds. So that's what we'll be testing out to start with. So I won't take any more time to discuss that diagram, because as I said before, all of you know that. I'll dive into skill. So let's start by creating a fresh skill. For that, you just go to your know, Amazon Alexa Developer Console, and let's just name the skill Hello World. Change the name to Demo Skill. Okay, is my voice still? Just let me know if it's still happening. Okay, so let's just give our skill a name, the demo skill, and as the endpoint, let's just select Alexa hosted the skill. What this will do is this will give us, these are three templates that we are even that we get for Python. Let's just carry on with the first template. Strange that it asks me for this, but actually when I check OBS now, I see that my video capture device is showing me input. So how many of you are there? So it shows me that 6 of you are here. It will be good if you just send a small that we get introduced. This is not a very fun. My voice is apparently cracking a lot. Let me just change the output again. Hello, hello. Hello, mic testing 1 2 3, mic testing 1 2 3. Yeah, this is how we test a microphone, here in India. So I've again changed it. Let's hope this time it's good. So Hini, just if you're hearing this, just let me know if the sound is any good, and if that is a yes, I'll continue. Okay, she says that it's better now. I hope it doesn't crack again. Thanks, Steve. Yeah. So I guess I was just talking in vain all this time. So I'll just give you a refresh if you are not able to, listen to me because of the cracking sound. So my name is Rahul, and I am a developer advocate at Dabble Labs. I've recently joined Dabble Labs, and I'll be building Python skills and templates for them, and streaming with streaming on a regular basis to interact with the developer community. In a nutshell, that's what my task is gonna be today. Since this is the first stream, we are starting out by building a very basic skill, which is equivalent to the hello world skill. But there are a few things that we will be adding to the hello world template that is already available out there to make it a bit more robust. I'll tell you all about that in a while. So since the sound is clear, I hope through the video, you were able to see that all we have done till now is we've just created a new skill using the hello world, template. So the first thing is the invocation name. For now, we're gonna, leave the invocation name as it is, and where we're gonna go is straight to the code section. So this is our endpoint, which is, if you see in the code, the endpoint is defined at this part, and you can see these all endpoints are for this for this endpoint backend. This is basically a AWS Lambda function, but it is integrated in the Alexa console itself, so you don't have to exclusively make an AWS account, which requires adding a credit card, which can be a problem for some students and people who don't have a credit card in general. So what we'll be using is this as a backend. To start with, what I'll do is I'll simply delete everything, and I'll just deploy this code, and we'll try to run it to see actually what happens when there is no backend at all. How is this service actually working? So once it's deployed now, we'll just open up the test app.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
Allow the microphone, go to development, and just type in open demo skill. As I told you before, by showing you that diagram, that the basic way in which an Alexa skill functions is that the skill sends a request, and our backend actually responds with a valid response that Alexa understands. So let's see the first part. The first part is the request part, which Alexa sends. So this is what a request looks like. Oh, sorry. uh, okay. So what I'll do is I'll simply take this request and go to JSON formatter and just show you how the JSON request looks like. So it basically contains four major sections. It has four parameters. The first one is the version, which mostly remains the same. The second one is session, the third one is context, and the fourth one is request. As we build skills, we'll get into each one of them step by step. Today, to start with, we are going to discuss the last parameter that we see, which is the request parameter. So whenever a skill makes a request, we get the launch request. So basically there are several types of requests that Alexa sends, but for our for to begin with, we'll just focus on three of these requests. The first one is launch request, which is sent every time your skill is invoked, and it's gonna be it's only for the skill invocation. Yeah, if a user invokes a particular intent in a skill, you don't get a launch request. You only get this when when you open the skill by just using its invocation name. So this is what I wanted to show you. Now let's get back to our Lambda function and have a look at the response. So I won't start building the entire skill. Instead, I'll just show you that what we can do. We can simply build a basic Lambda handler function which takes two parameters. The first one is the request from Alexa, and the second one is the Lambda context object. So for now you can simply ignore the Lambda context part, because that is something which is required by AWS Lambda functions. What we are interested in is only the request part. So what you can do is, you can just simply go out there and print the request from Alexa, and maybe just return a response. What you have to return is, I've actually prepared a small little JSON for you. So this, as you can see, this is a simple JSON which just contains a few parameters like the version, response, and session attributes. This is the minimum that is required to produce a speech output, and we're just gonna see a demo of how this works. So as you can see, no complex coding, no processing, no logic. All we do is that the request we get, we just make a basic function which receives the request from our Alexa service, and it just responds with a JSON. So since we have
There
done
was a
that,
problem with the
let's just go
requested
back to
skills
the test
response.
console. I'll give the page a refresh, and let's just open this again. Hey Ashish. Okay, so there was a problem. Nice, let's just see what the problem was. So to see the diagnose the problem, we'll actually have to go into the logs. As you can see, I went into the EU Ireland logs. That is where the logs are stored for my region. There are three regions here. So if you don't see the logs in one region, make sure you check out the other regions as well. Okay, I'm not seeing any logs here. So maybe the region has changed. I'll just open up the third one also. This is the most annoying part of the developer console part. Even if it opens up, it will just refresh and sign you out in some time. So that gets annoying after a time. But let's see. I hope it loads this time. Yeah, and we can see logs. Let's see the logs. It says lambda handler missing on module lambda function. Okay. You see a small spelling mistake. It wasn't lambda handler, it was lambda landler. So now that we've rectified our mistake, it should probably work now. So the good thing is, since we're only making changes to the backend, so we don't need to refresh the page every time,
This is a simple
because we
Hello
haven't
World skill.
built the skill again. I'll explain all of that in a bit. So yeah, as you can see, our skill ran successfully, and this is the output. As you can see, we're seeing here, and this is the JSON output that we sent. So I hope this explains how the skill basically works, the JSON input and the JSON output part. So it's just this simple, that there is a request that goes in and there is a response that comes out, and both these are in simple JSON format. So having done this, let's get back to our code. And since this only builds up a small response, and we want to build more complex skills, so this strategy will not go a long way. What we'll have to do is uh, so when he says that my video is frozen, can you guys just confirm if you're able to see that or not? Hey Stuart, how are you? Okay, she says I'm back, so I'll just continue. So let's actually start building the actual skill. So the actual skill, again, we'll be building from scratch. But the approach I'll be using here is using the Python SDK. Just to give you a disclaimer that I've only started using the SDK about a week back. Before that, what I used to do is I used to build, using this lambda handler function. I used to handle this request and make different functions to handle intents in a different way. But recently I came across the SDK for Python, and I started using it. And I've actually found that it helps you reduce the amount of time by a big margin. So that is the approach that I'll be using here. So to start off with, what we need to do is we need to handle the launch request. As we saw that the very first request that we got was the launch request, right? So let's go out there and handle the launch request. For that, let's simply build a class which is called launch intent handler. The input to this class will be an object called abstract input. Actually, let me just confirm that. It should be abstract in request handler. Yeah. Sorry, I just forgot that. It is the abstract request handler. And when we use the classes approach, what we need to do is we need to basically define two functions. The first function is called the can handle function, and it takes the handler input as a input parameter. So we are just returning true. I'll explain why. The second part is the handle function, and it also takes the same input parameters. What this does is we'll actually do the same thing that we did before. We'll simply No, actually, let's do it the other way around. Let's handle, so we have to return a skill building response. Before going forward, just let me tell you what these two functions basically do here. So the first function, which is the can handle function, it takes the handler input as an input. It checks for any logical expression that we have provided here, and then it returns a boolean value. So it can be either true or false. But the handle function will if the handle function is executed or not will actually depend upon the can handle function. So if it returns true, then this function is executed. If it returns false, then this is not executed. So in this case, what we are going to do is let's first start by actually importing from, I'll simply copy and paste actually instead of spending a lot of time with this. So the first thing we do is we copy, we import the abstract request handler that we are using as an input, and it is in the ASK SDK core.dispatch components. Once we have done that, we have this. The next thing we need is a function, are actually two functions. So those would be dot utils, I guess. Yeah, that would be import is request type, and the other one would be is intent name. So these are two methods that are already defined in the utils library. So what these methods do is, these are simple basic functions in which you pass the handler input parameter along with the name of the request or the intent, and it returns true or false by matching them. So you don't actually have to write all of the boilerplate code. That's the part where the ASK actually comes in really handy. Otherwise, if we were doing all of this from scratch, we would actually need to define all of those functions. But what we'll simply just use these functions and say return is request type followed by just give me a minute. Okay, followed by launch request. As we just saw, make sure that the spelling is correct. So this is what we want to match, and the other input is the handler input. So if if this statement returns true, then this function would be executed. So in this function, what do we want? We want a speech output, right? So let's just set our speech output to, this is a demo speech output, and simply return handler input dot build response, dot response builder dot speak, yeah, and we just pass in the speech output here. So again, what we are simply doing here is that we already have a response builder inside of input, and we are just initializing it with using its different methods to just feed our input to the response. We are actually making the response. So before we did this, our response was empty, but now after we add the speak component, the speech output component is added to the request, and this is what should be spoken out. But we are still missing on one important point, is that before, you as you saw, we were actually using the lambda handler function, right? So whenever we use AWS lambda endpoint, it's the Lambda handler function which gets called. So even while using SDK, we have a method by which we can build that particular kind of um, handling mechanism that AWS supports. So for that, let's simply, first of all, we'll have to import another library, and this will be called I don't know, wait, skill builder, yeah. From ASK SDK code dot skill builder import skill builder. Make sure the spelling and the casing is right because that creates an issue. So once we've done that, let's simply, what we have to do here is, since we have actually, we what we have done is we've made a class which is the launch intent handler class, but we need to add this class to a skill object, and even before we do that, we actually have to make a skill object by doing this. Okay, so here we've initialized a variable with the skill builder. Basically, it's now a skill builder object type. And what we do next is we simply add our intent handler to the skill. So we do that by doing add request handler, and just by doing this, we have actually added this request handler to our skill. Next, what we need to do, I think we are done. The last part that we need to do is we have to assign it to the lambda handler variable. As AWS understands this language, so we'll just simply say sb dot lambda handler. So this function, I guess if I've done it correctly, yeah, this function will take care of the rest, and it'll make everything in the form that lambda and Alexa skill kit go in sync. So let me just go ahead and deploy this. Oh my god, my session has expired. Hey Sachin, good to see you here, man. So it's asked me to sign in again. Let me just quickly sign in. So yeah, let me just paste that code again and deploy the code. Once the deployment is done, uh, we should actually receive this response from the server. Let's see if everything goes as expected. Meanwhile, if you guys have any questions, Sohini is there in the chat. You can feel free to ask any questions that you have, and I guess she'll be happy to answer you. So let me just open up the skill again.
This is a demo speech output.
As you can see that we get the same output that we actually defined in our skill. So yeah, this is now working. What we've done is we've simply handled the launch request, and we have some other requests that we'll be handling now one by one, which will complete our skill. So let's begin that process. So let me just quickly, I won't be spending much of the time just writing out the code. Instead, what I'll be doing is I'll be copying and pasting most of the things which are just repetitive. So let me go to the next class. So the next class is this is called the the handler for the session end request. So why do we need this? So every time a skill session ends, you get this request similar to the launch request. So the launch request is when the skill is invoked, and the session ended request is actually when the skill session gets over. So same as the launch request, we need to handle this, but it's not, there is not much that we actually have to do here, since it doesn't actually send a response back to the skill. Once the session ends, it doesn't actually say anything. So we just have to handle it. So if you have any, cleanup logic that you want to add at the end of the skill, so you can do that right here. Okay, so now we have both of these functions. Let me just quickly get the other helper functions. What all helper functions do we need? So let's go back to our interaction model and have a look that what all functions do we really need. So for this very skill, we have four intents that you can see. What an intent is, I'll quickly explain what intent is. So let's have a look at the hello world intent to understand. An intent can you can you can say that it's a simple name for a collection of utterances. An utterance is the way you will speak a particular command. So for example, in the hello world intent, it's showing you different ways that a user might say hello. So someone might say hello, someone might say hi, but all of these things signify one basic thing, that the user is saying hello. So we club all of this into one single intent, and this is the name of the intent. This is the name that we'll use in our backend to resolve and understand which intent did the user actually call, and handle it by our logic and send a response. So this is a custom intent, which which you can see that there are several utterances, but you can see there are also several built-in intents that you can't remove, and you are required to handle all of them. So let me just drink some water. So the first one, let's see, is the stop intent and the cancel intent. What these two do is simply whenever a user says stop or cancel, they just handle the request and send it back to our backend. This is the help intent. Sorry. And this is a navigate home intent. So we don't really need to handle the navigate home intent, since it is something which is already handled by Amazon. What we'll focus is on these three intents, and maybe also add another intent which is very valuable, which is the fallback intent. So yeah, I think we've added that. Let's just quickly go ahead and save and build the model and start making changes to our backend. So since you just saw that we've already made those two, we've handled those two requests, the next request that we are going to handle is this. So actually let's again go there on the console, and if this session is not ended, let me try saying hi.
Hello, and welcome to December.
No. Okay. So what I wanted to show is the request that Alexa sends once an intent is requested, but I'll show you that later. Let's handle the request. So instead of the launch request, let's name this one the help intent handler, and the input to help intent handler will remain the same. Actually, I'll actually copy and paste stuff. So yeah, this is the help intent handler, similar to uh, what you saw before. What it simply does is it takes the abstract request handler object as the input, resolves it, and just matches whether it's the help intent or not, and simply gives out the speech output. So we've handled the help request. Now we handle the stop and cancel intent as well. So this is where we've handled two intents in one intent handler, since cancel and stop, they both do more or less the same thing. So we can handle both of them right here. Having done that, let's see what we are left with. I think all we are left with is a fallback intent. So I'll simply copy the help intent itself. Actually, there is one small mistake here. Let me correct it. So yes, uh, here is the fallback intent handler. Yeah, we've defined the fallback intent handler, and we'll change the name here also. Yeah, I guess everything is in place now, and things should work. Just before we move on, you must have seen that there is another component which is added, which was not there in our very first request. We only use the speak element. Here we are also using the ask element. What the ask element is basically it's a reprompt. So whenever Alexa sends a request back to you, and it speaks that out, for example it says, hey, this is the demo speech output. After that, it waits for a few seconds and sees if whether you respond or not. And in case that you do not respond, it it again gives a prompt to the user to respond, which in this case is called the reprompt. So this is a very important thing that you must be using in every skill for a good design practice. So yeah, let's now move on, and I guess let's just simply run the skill. No, we missed an important part here. So since we've added the launch request, let's just add all other requests as well. It's the help, fallback, and the cancel or stop intent handler. Whenever you're defining these, make sure that the session ended request is at the very end, because if it's somewhere in the middle, it can actually cause issues at times. So to be on the safer side, let's just keep it at the end. I think everyone everything should be good now. So let's just deploy the skill and test it out again. I hope guys, if
This is a demo speech output. This is a demo speech output. You can say hello to me. How can I help? Goodbye.
I've changed the microphone. Just let me know if you hear me now. Okay, but there must be a disturbance, right? Let me let me change. Wait. Let me change it again. Can you hear me now? Okay. So that was Sohini working with me to, just sort out the issues. And as I just saw, while we were having issues, the viewership has just gone up. So the new people who've just come in, just, drop a hi in the chat. Hey, Manpreet. Good to see you here, man. So yeah, where were we? Let me just get back to the code. Yeah, I was talking about the exception handling. So we've added this class in which we are using the abstract exception handler as the input, and as you can see, it simply returns true without evaluating anything. It just sees that if the input type is this, you get an exception, you simply handle this through this function, and all this function does is simply log this error and says, sorry, I had trouble doing what you asked. It might not seem very important to you, but you will see that every now and then when you use things like APIs, or when there is a any you say any error in your code, so the code can actually break anytime in between, and that can cause your skill to fail. So it's a good practice to actually add an exception handler so that your skill does not fail. And since we've added the exception handler, we also need to uh, add it here. I think it's the yeah it must be add exception handler. Yes, so we've added the exception handler as well. So now if our skill faces an issue, it will actually call this particular class and give us this output. To demonstrate this, I'll simply go to
This is a demo speech output. You can say hello to me. How can I help?
so yeah one thing that I wanted to show you before, it's right here, that I wanted to show you the request. So previously, as you saw that in launch request, we got a launch request. Similarly, when you make an intent, where you call any of the other intents, you get an intent request, and inside that JSON, you actually get the name of the intent. So this is where our handler input gets this request intent from, and in our code, when we define it here, right, when we say that match this with this, so inside the request, this is where it's getting the intent name from. Okay, so what I was trying to show here is show you error handling. So if I say hi now, the request should ideally fail, because there is an intent which is defined. As you can see here, that there is a hello world intent defined, but we haven't actually defined that
There
intent
was a
in our
problem with
backend.
the requested skills
So the request
response.
should ideally fail. Let's just see if it fails. See, it said that there was a problem with the requested skills response, but my only issue here being that it should have actually logged it here. Okay, now I get it. I think it's because of this logger error that since we are using the logger function, our issue is not resolved. It's not actually calling this class method because of that. Okay, once we've deployed this, everything should be good to go. I think we've nearly reached the end of the skill. There only one more thing, that actually two more things that I'll be adding to the code to make it more robust, and then it would be complete. So now that the skill is deployed, let's
This
just
is a
go
demo
again
speech
and
output.
open demo skill.
Sorry, I had trouble doing
We
what you
get the demo
asked.
output.
Please try
We simply
again.
say hi. So as you can see here, that last time what we got was actually an error, and this was an error response from the skill. But this time, you know, beyond this, you couldn't actually communicate with the skill because the session has actually ended due to an error. But this time when we do that, our skill still remains in
You can
session,
say hello to me.
and you can
How can
actually
I help?
continue talking to it. So I'll just show you. If I now type help, yeah, it actually returns the response from our Alexa hosted endpoint. So this proves that the skill is still in session. So this is what the this is why we add the exception handler. It's like the skill would still function, that if you don't have the error handler mechanism, if you don't have the exception handler there, but it's actually a very good practice to add this to make the skill very robust. The next thing we're going to do is we're just going to add the logging mechanism. So the logging mechanism is pretty straightforward. All you need to do is, first of all, import logging. That's a library which is available out there. uh, you need to initialize an instance of the logging, um, the logger, and here with this line it is initialized, and in the very second line, as you can see, we are setting a level. So what we are simply doing here is the logger has several levels which starts from info, then there is info, debug, error, and so on. There are 5 or 6 levels. So what this tells the logger is which request and above to actually log. So this is the very basic request. So you can see this is the lowest form of logging. Yeah, this is the lowest form of logging. So we include each and every kind of log which is out there. So everything will be printed. Now that we've added this, let's uncomment the logger. So here, as you can see, this is logger.error, and it is specially a case for error handling. What we'll also be doing is, just to show you how things work, I'll simply add a logger, a line here which says in launch intent handler. What this does is, whenever this part of the skill is hit, actually not here, because yeah, there is still matching right here. If it handles, if this particular intent is called and this handler function is called, so it simply prints this on in the logs dashboard, and you can later on go there and see if it actually hit this particular intent or some other intents. You can do the same thing with with each and every intent. Yeah, I guess there was one last thing, but I think we've reached the hour mark, and I would just, since it's the first stream, I will not go much deeper into this part, and I think this is all that I would be actually discussing today. If you guys, like this, and if you want that, I should be doing this again, with all the errors and this fumbling that I'm doing, then just, leave out a comment down there, and just let me know how the stream was, and I'll see you again on next Wednesday. Till then, If you have any questions, as I said before, just hit me up on Twitter. My username is Rahul Yadav 360. Sorry for not mentioning that on the screen, but I'll be probably better prepared next time, and I'll get all of that on screen for you. So yeah, I enjoyed the session. Hope you guys enjoyed this as well. Thank you for joining in, and that's all for today.